The salt burns my eyes, carried on a wind that smells like everything I thought was ours. My hand is pressed against the cool glass, forehead leaning there, watching. Inside, the lights are on.
Warm.
Inviting. A scene playing out that doesn't belong to me anymore, though the sand outside is still clinging to my bare feet, though the key in my pocket feels like a stone. He's laughing. My husband. His head tilted back, a sound I used to chase like sunlight through the house. And she's there, right there. In the kitchen I designed, pouring wine into the glasses we registered for, wearing a robe that looks suspiciously like mine. The one with the terry cloth trim. It's not a nightmare. The cold seep into my palms against the glass is real. The tightening in my chest, the sudden inability to breathe. All real. This is the scene I dreaded but never truly believed I would see. My husband, his mistress, settled into the beach house. Our beach house. As if they belong. The waves crash outside, a roar that should cleanse but only magnifies the filth I see inside. Every piece of furniture, every painting on the wall, every throw pillow feels like a betrayal, complicit in this invasion. They are not just in my house, they are in my sanctuary. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, it helps me more than you know. Before this, life had a rhythm, a predictable tide. It wasn't perfect, nothing is, but it was ours. We built it, brick by brick, compromise by compromise. 10 years. A decade woven into the fabric of this life. My husband, Mark.
Solid.
Reliable. Or so I thought. We met in college, clumsy and hopeful. Grew up together, really. Navigated careers, family dynamics, the awkward dance of merging two lives into one. Our city apartment was chic, functional, a testament to our shared ambition. But the beach house was different. It was the dream made tangible. We found it 5 years ago. A little rundown, neglected, but right on the sand, with views that stole your breath. It needed everything. Every weekend, every spare dime, every ounce of energy went into it. We gutted it ourselves, learned to hang drywall, tile floors. Laughed until our sides hurt covered in paint, argued over faucet fixtures, made up tangled in cheap sleeping bags on the subfloor under a sky full of stars you could only see away from the city lights. This house wasn't just property, it was a physical manifestation of our partnership, our shared vision, our love story. The salt-worn wood, the uneven flagstones on the patio, the way the morning sun hit the master bedroom, every detail held a memory, a piece of us. My family wasn't thrilled about the fixer-upper phase. My father, especially.
He's
particular. Built his empire from the ground up, finance, real estate, legal holdings scattered like chess pieces across the city and beyond. He operates in a world of contracts, loopholes, and strategically applied pressure. Emotions are liabilities in his business, sentimentality a weakness. He'd offered to buy us something finished, polished. But we were young, idealistic. We wanted to build our own foundation, prove we could do it independently. The beach house was our declaration of independence, our stubborn pride made manifest. Mark loved showing my father that he wasn't just marrying into money, that he could build value too. My father had always respected that stubbornness, that drive in Mark, even if he sometimes found it inefficient. He called it character, though sometimes it felt like he was just assessing Mark's potential as an asset or a threat. Our life flowed. Weekdays in the city, weekends by the water. Friends came and went, BBQs on the deck, quiet mornings with coffee, watching dolphins arc in the distance. We talked about kids, about retirement, about growing old together in this place. It was the anchor, the constant. Mark seemed happy. I was happy. The cracks were too small to see, hidden beneath the routine, masked by the sound of the waves. The first hint wasn't a smoking gun. It was a change in the tide, subtle but noticeable. Mark started working later.
Stress, he said.
Big deal coming through. He was distant, preoccupied. His phone became an extension of his hand, vibrating constantly, screen angled away from me. Little things. Missing our usual Friday night dinner. A sudden business trip that seemed to pop up out of nowhere. I asked. He deflected. My questions felt like accusations, which he pointed out, turning my worry into my problem, my trust issues. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was being paranoid. The narrative he fed me was plausible, the pressure of work, the weight of providing, the need for space. I bought it. I wanted to buy it. The alternative was too frightening to consider. Then came the day the ground gave way. A Tuesday. A mundane Tuesday. I was working from home, sorting through bills, when a notification popped up on our shared cloud storage, a photo album. Mark had always been terrible at organizing photos. I clicked, thinking it was a backlog of beach house sunsets or dinner parties. It wasn't. It was titled Work Trip NYC. The first few were innocuous, conference shots, cityscapes. Then they changed. Selfies. Of him and her.
Close.
Too close. Holding hands across a restaurant table. Standing pressed together against a railing with the city lights blurred behind them. Her face, young, vibrant, a stranger's face etched into the story of my life. The last photo was of them in a hotel room, half undressed, tangled in sheets. My husband's face, relaxed, happy, looking at her with an expression I hadn't seen directed at me in months. The world didn't stop. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. Cars passed outside. The clock on the wall kept ticking. But my internal world shattered. It wasn't just infidelity. It was a carefully constructed lie, built over months, maybe longer. The work trips, the late nights, the distance, all of it suddenly clicked into place, a horrifying mosaic of betrayal. When he came home that night, I was sitting on the couch, the laptop open on the coffee table, the photos still on the screen. He walked in, tie loosened, briefcase in hand, and stopped. His eyes went from me, to the screen, back to me. The air thickened, suffocating. There was no denial, no fumbling for excuses, just a slow, sinking realization on his face that he was caught. Who is she, Mark? My voice was thin, reedy, unfamiliar. He didn't answer immediately, just stood there, a stranger in my living room. Her name is Jessica, he finally said, his voice flat. From the office. Jessica from the office. I repeated the name, letting it taste like ash on my tongue. The one you've been having an affair with. He nodded. A single, nauseating nod. The questions poured out then, a torrent of pain and confusion.
How long? Why?
Did any of it mean anything? The promises, the plans, the beach house? He answered in clipped sentences, defensive, trying to minimize, to justify. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything.
He was stressed.
He didn't know how it happened.
Lies.
More lies. I saw it in his eyes. He was already gone. The days that followed were a blur of raw emotion. Tears, shouting, pleading, silence. The apartment felt too small, filled with ghosts of our former selves. He stayed, physically, but the chasm between us was wider than any ocean. We tried talking, but the words were poisoned. Everything he said felt like a justification for his actions. Every attempt I made to understand felt like a pathetic plea. He talked about needing space, needing time to figure things out. Time? Space? He'd had time and space. He'd just spent it with someone else. The beach house became a battleground, symbolic and literal. He wanted to go there alone, to think. I refused. It was ours. The one place that was supposed to be safe, untouched by the city, by work, by infidelity. He argued it was just a house, that I was being dramatic. Just a house? It was where we built our dreams, where I imagined our future grandchildren digging in the sand. How could he not see that? Or maybe he did, and that's why he wanted it, to erase me from it. He started spending nights away. Staying with a friend, he said. I didn't ask. I knew. Every absence was a confirmation of her presence elsewhere. The pain was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe, hard to move. Friends offered comfort, advice, but their words felt distant, muffled by the ringing in my ears.
Divorce.
The word hung in the air, heavy and cold. But divorce felt like surrendering everything. Not just him, but the life we built, the future I planned, the identity I had as his wife. And the beach house. The thought of him walking away with half of it, maybe even using it with her, was a twist of a knife I couldn't bear. He became bolder. The hushed phone calls turned into casual mentions of Jessica. Little details of her life, her preferences, slipping into conversation as if she were a mutual friend. It felt like psychological warfare, a deliberate erosion of my reality, a way to make me accept her existence in his life. He started spending weekends away too. Gone Friday evening, back Sunday night, smelling faintly of salt and a perfume that wasn't mine. He said he was driving, clearing his head. I knew where he was. The beach house. Alone? I doubted it. The image of them there, in our place, was a constant torment. I started driving there myself sometimes, parking down the road, watching the house from a distance, a dark shape against the night sky. Sometimes, lights were on. Sometimes they were off. Each visit felt like tearing open a wound, but I couldn't stay away. I needed to see the truth, no matter how much it hurt. It was a morbid ritual, a self-inflicted pain I couldn't stop. One Saturday morning, I drove out there on impulse. The air was crisp, the sky a brilliant, impossible blue. Hope is a stubborn weed. Part of me still clung to the possibility that this was a terrible mistake, a phase. Maybe he was there alone, wrestling with his conscience. I pulled up, not down the road this time, but right into the driveway. His car was there. Good. Maybe we could finally talk. I walked towards the front door, the familiar path crunching under my worn flip-flops. My hand went to the doorknob, paused. The curtains in the living room were open, and I saw them. Through the large front window, I saw them sitting on the couch. The one we'd painstakingly chosen together. Their heads were close. He was holding her hand. They were laughing. It wasn't just a weekend visit. There were suitcases near the door. Her shoes by his. A different energy permeated the house, one that wasn't mine. This wasn't a secret rendezvous. This was occupancy. He looked up then, saw me standing on the porch. His smile vanished, replaced by a look of annoyance, then something colder, almost triumphant. He didn't look guilty. He looked like I was an inconvenience, interrupting his new life. He didn't rush to the door. He didn't look shocked. He looked expected, as if he knew I'd come eventually, and he was ready for me to see it. That's when it shifted. The pain, the confusion, the heartbreak. It didn't disappear, but something else surged, white-hot and sharp. Rage. A cold, pure fury that burned away the confusion. They weren't just having an affair. They were staging a takeover. They were claiming my space, mocking me with their presence in a house that held my most cherished memories. This wasn't about love or marriage anymore. It was about power, about disrespect, about taking something that wasn't theirs and rubbing my face in it. He finally came to the door, opening it just enough to block my entry. Jessica hovered behind him, peeking over his shoulder, a smirk playing on her lips. She knew. Of course she knew. This was her victory lap. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice flat, unwelcoming. "What am I doing here?" I echoed, the words laced with ice. "What are you doing here, Mark? With her? You moved her in?" He didn't flinch. We decided we needed space to figure things out. This is the easiest place for now. The easiest place? My voice rose, cracking slightly. This is our house, Mark. We built this. This is my home. It's also my home, he countered, his jaw set. And legally, I have every right to be here. And to have guests. Guests. She wasn't a guest. The suitcases, the shoes, she was living here. In our beach house. The sheer audacity of it stole my breath. He had moved his mistress into my sanctuary, our symbol of commitment, and was using it as their love nest, flaunting it in my face. "You can't do this," I whispered, the cold beginning to set into my bones. "I just did," he said, a hint of that sickening triumph returning to his eyes. "Maybe it's time you accepted things have changed." He started to close the door. I put my hand on it, stopping him. "Get out of my house, Mark," He laughed then. A short, sharp sound devoid of humor. Your house? We own it together. And right now I'm in it. With Jessica. Maybe you should leave. You're making a scene. Jessica giggled from behind him. It was a small sound, but it landed like a blow. They were a unit. United against me. In my house. My knees felt weak. The world tilted. I was standing on my own property, the place I loved most, and being told to leave by my husband and the woman he was having an affair with. Humiliation washed over me, a tidal wave of shame and despair. He wasn't just cheating, he was erasing me. Erasing our history, our future, replacing it with hers. And using the very foundation we built together to do it. All those years of work, of love, of sacrifice poured into this house, now providing a comfortable backdrop for their betrayal. It was the deepest cut. Everything felt lost. The marriage was over, clearly. But losing the house this way? Having it tainted, occupied by them? It felt like losing a part of myself. I stumbled back from the door, unable to form words. He watched me go, that cold, assessing look on his face. Jessica's eyes followed me too, a flicker of something. Pity? Victory?
In them.
I got back in my car, shaking so violently I could barely turn the key. I drove away. The image of them in the window burned into my mind. The beach house, the symbol of our life, was now a symbol of my defeat. All the fight seemed to drain out of me. What was the point? He held the legal cards, or so he believed. He was there, I wasn't. He had her, I had nothing. Just the bitter taste of salt and betrayal. I drove back to the city, the highway stretching endlessly before me, feeling utterly, irrevocably broken. The apartment was empty, silent, a stark reminder of the life that was gone. I sank onto the couch, staring blankly at the wall, the humiliation a constant ache in my gut. The next few days were a blur of despair. I barely ate, barely slept. Friends called, but I didn't answer. My parents called. My mother was worried, urging me to come home. My father, he didn't say much. He just listened, his silence heavier than my mother's concern. I finally went to their place, a sprawling, quiet estate miles from the city. The air there felt different, controlled, orderly. Nothing like the chaotic mess my life had become. I sat in my father's study, the walls lined with books on law, history, finance. The room smelled of old paper and leather. He sat behind his massive desk, watching me with those shrewd, assessing eyes that missed nothing. I poured out the story, haltingly at first, then in a rush. The affair, the lies, the beach house, the move-in. The humiliation of being told to leave my own home. When I finished, the silence stretched, broken only by the ticking of a grandfather clock in the hall. He didn't offer platitudes. He didn't express outrage, not in the way most fathers would. His face remained impassive. The beach house, he said finally, his voice low and measured. The title is joint, correct? Yes, I whispered. But he's there. He said, he has a right to be there. Occupancy is not necessarily ownership, he stated, leaning back in his chair. Especially unauthorized occupancy in a primary residence that has been temporarily vacated by one party. Or, in this case, a secondary residence. I looked at him, confused. But he lives there now. With her. That, he said, a flicker of something I couldn't quite read in his eyes, is a problem for them. He picked up a heavy-looking file from his desk, opened it. It wasn't related to me. It was always business. This was his world. A world I had deliberately distanced myself from, seeking a simpler life with Mark. But looking at him now, surrounded by the tools of his trade, the phones, the computers, the stacks of documents, I saw a path I hadn't considered. What can I do? I asked, my voice barely audible. He thinks he's won. He's in the house. He's comfortable. My father closed the file, with a soft thud. He looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps seeing not just his distraught daughter, but someone who had inherited a sliver of his own stubbornness. Comfort, he said, his voice like gravel, is a vulnerability, especially when it's built on stolen ground. He didn't offer comfort. He offered strategy. He didn't rage against Mark. He assessed the situation like a business problem. He asked questions about the funding of the house, the specific wording on the title, how utility bills were paid, where Mark claimed primary residence. I answered, my mind still reeling from the past week. He listened intently, occasionally making a note on a small pad. There are ways, he said, tapping the pad with his pen. Legal avenues. They are not always quick, but sometimes they can be surprisingly efficient. He paused, his gaze sharp. Do you want to fight this? Not just the divorce, but this specific humiliation. Do you want to reclaim that house and show him that he cannot simply take what is yours? It wasn't just a question about the house. It was a question about my spirit. Was I going to curl up and disappear, letting them live happily ever after in the ruins of my marriage, in my home? Or was I going to stand up? The image of Jessica smirking behind Mark, of his triumphant expression, flashed to my mind. The cold fury surged again, stronger this time, mixed with a steel resolve I hadn't known I possessed. Yes, I said, my voice steady now. I want to fight. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched my father's lips. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just seen his prey stumble. Good, he said. Then we begin. He made a call. Short, precise, all business. He used names I recognized from the mastheads of prestigious law firms. Within an hour, a meeting was arranged for the following morning. He didn't explain the strategy, not in detail. His world was complex, layered with legal maneuvers and strategic timing. He just said, we will explore the options for immediate remedy regarding unauthorized occupation and potential property code violations. Sometimes the fastest path isn't the most obvious 1 inch. I left his study feeling different. Not lighter, but heavier with purpose. The despair hadn't vanished, but it was overlaid with a hard determination. I wasn't just the heartbroken wife anymore. I was a daughter of my father, entering a fight on his terms, using his weapons. The game had changed. Mark thought he was playing chess. He didn't know I had access to the nuclear codes. The next morning, I sat in a large, impersonal conference room with 3 lawyers. My father was there, silent for the most part, observing. The lead lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Eleanor Vance, spoke in calm, dispassionate terms. She explained the options, the potential timelines. Divorce proceedings would take months, possibly years, to sort out property division. But there were other angles. We looked into the property records, she said, clicking through slides on a screen. The house is held jointly, which complicates a clean ownership claim outside of divorce. However, given the specific way it was financed, a significant portion was structured as a loan from your father's holding company for improvements against the initial purchase price, which was lower, combined with the fact that Mr. Davis maintains his primary legal residence at the city apartment. She outlined a strategy. It wasn't about proving infidelity or even sorting divorce assets yet. It was about property law, residency requirements, and leveraged legal positioning related to the financing structure. It was technical, cold, and brilliant. The loan from my father's company, initially intended as a flexible way to fund renovations without the hassle of a traditional mortgage, gave them standing. Combining that with Mark's clear primary residence elsewhere, they could argue a case for unauthorized occupation, almost treating him and his mistress as trespassers, despite his partial ownership. It wasn't a divorce action. It was a property action, layered with financial and residency arguments. This isn't standard, Eleanor said, her gaze meeting mine. It relies on exploiting specific technicalities and leveraging your father's position and the structure of the financing. It will be aggressive. It will give them very little time to react. How little time? I asked. Hours, she replied. Not days. We file today. We serve today. The action is immediate removal based on a combination of legal grounds: unauthorized occupancy violating terms tied to the financing agreement, potential code violations related to unregistered residents, and leveraging existing financial instruments tied to the property. It's complex, designed for speed and maximum disorientation. It was ruthless. It bypassed the emotional mess of divorce court, the messy arguments about who deserved what. It was pure strategic legal force. It felt cold, but necessary. What will happen? I asked. A legal team will go to the house, she explained, accompanied by a court officer, possibly law enforcement to ensure peace. They will serve the papers, an immediate vacate order. They will be given a short period to collect essential belongings and leave the premises. The locks will be changed. The property will be secured. My husband, Jessica, served with an eviction notice. In the beach house. The place where they thought they were safe, where they thought they had won. The image of him opening the door, smug, telling me to leave, flashed again. Do it, I said, the word firm. Do it today. My father nodded, a silent acknowledgement. He finally spoke, addressing Eleanor. Ensure everything is handled. Discreetly, but decisively. No drama. Just process. The lawyers went to work. My father drove me back to his estate. The waiting began. It was the hardest part. My phone remained silent. I pictured them in the house, unaware. Maybe having breakfast on the deck. Maybe walking on the beach. Living their stolen domesticity. And somewhere right now a legal team was moving, papers in hand. Hours crawled by. The sun tracked across the sky. I tried to read, to distract myself, but my mind was a whirlwind. Doubt crept in. Was this too much? Too cruel? Was I becoming like my father, cold and calculating? But then I remembered the look on Mark's face, the smirk on hers. They chose this fight. They chose to humiliate me, to take my home. This wasn't just revenge. It was a declaration that I would not be erased. Late in the afternoon, my phone rang. It was Eleanor Vance's office. Not her directly, but an associate. Ms. Davis. The voice was crisp, professional. Confirming the service was completed successfully. Approximately 45 minutes ago. And, I asked, my voice tight. They were served the immediate vacate order on the premises, the associate reported. They were.
Surprised.
They attempted to argue, but the court officer was present. Law enforcement was also on site as a precaution, though not directly involved in the service itself. They were instructed to gather essentials and vacate within the hour. Did they? Did they leave?
Yes.
Within the allocated time. They were visibly distressed. Mr. Davis attempted to contact counsel, but given the nature of the order and the legal basis, there was no immediate recourse on site. The property has been secured. The locks have been changed. I hung up the phone. Stood in the middle of my father's quiet garden, the manicured perfection a stark contrast to the controlled chaos that had just unfolded miles away. They were gone. Evicted. From the beach house. The speed and finality of it were stunning, even to me. They thought they had time, that this would be a drawn-out battle, giving them leverage. They expected tears, arguments, maybe a messy confrontation. They got lawyers, a court order, and an hour to pack. I imagine the scene. The knock on the door. Mark opening it, perhaps expecting a delivery or a neighbor. Standing there with Jessica, comfortable in their assumed space. Then the faces of the lawyers, the court officer. The crisp, legal language explaining they had to leave now. The dawning realization on his face, the confusion, the frantic attempts to argue, to call his own lawyer, only to be met with the unyielding force of a perfectly executed legal maneuver he never saw coming. And Jessica, standing there, the smirk gone, reality hitting her just as hard. The beach house, their love nest, dissolving around them. The associate said they were visibly distressed. That was the lawyer's clinical term for blindsided, panicked, humiliated. Mark, the man who had calmly told me to leave my house, suddenly finding himself on the street with his mistress, their suitcases, and nowhere to go. The sweet, sharp taste of vindication. I went back to the beach house the next day. The air was different now. Quiet. Empty. The for sale sign hadn't gone up yet, but it felt inevitable. The lawyers advised listing it immediately. The legal strategy had secured my position regarding the property, making a clean sale the most straightforward next step in dissolving the joint ownership. I walked through the rooms, the silence amplifying the sound of the waves. The house smelled faintly of stale air, not the sea salt and citrus cleaner I usually used. Their presence lingered like a bad scent, but it no longer felt like an invasion. It felt temporary, like a brief, unpleasant squatting that had been summarily ended. I walked into the kitchen. The wine glasses were still out on the counter, a half-empty bottle beside them, evidence of the life they had so confidently begun building here, abruptly halted. A chill ran through me, not of fear, but of the cold power that had been unleashed. My father's power, yes, but wielded because I chose to wield it. Upstairs, in the master bedroom, our bedroom, a few things were left behind: a cheap phone charger, a discarded magazine. On the bedside table, I found a crumpled piece of paper. It was a list. Things to buy for the beach house: groceries, toiletries, little domestic details. A grocery list for their future here. It was pathetic, a monument to their hubris. They were already nesting, already planning their life in the home they took from me. I picked up the list, looked out the window at the endless horizon, the waves still rolling in, indifferent to the human drama that had played out here. The salt air filled my lungs. This house held so much. The laughter, the work, the love, the betrayal, the pain, the cold, hard fight. It wasn't mine anymore, not in the way it had been. The magic was gone, replaced by the memory of betrayal and the clinical efficiency of the eviction. But it wasn't theirs either. And that was the victory. A cold victory, perhaps bought at a high price, but a victory nonetheless. He tried to erase me, to replace me, and use my own history against me. But he underestimated the foundation I came from. He thought he was dealing with a heartbroken wife. He forgot he married the daughter of the man who wrote the rules. I left the house, locking the door behind me. The key felt different in my hand now, less like a stone of sorrow, more like the key to a cage that had been opened. My marriage was over. The beach house was lost to its past. But I had stood my ground. I had fought back, not with tears or pleas, but with the cold, hard tools of the world I grew up in. And I had won. The victory wasn't sweet, not really. It was quiet and heavy, and filled with the knowledge that some doors, once closed this way, can never be reopened. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.